Welcome back, everybody. Today we are going to be making something a little bit different than the past couple of videos. We're actually going to be making a dessert today. We are going to be making a upside down peach bourbon cake. Now that was a mouthful, but I've never made it before, so this is going to be an adventure for both of us. So to get started, let's talk through some of the ingredients we're going to need for today. So obviously peaches. For the top layer, which is technically the bottom layer until you flip it over. Complicated, I know. But anyway, so peaches first. That's going to require us to cut these, which will be an adventure as well. Slice them up, peel them, so that they can be on the top / bottom. And then also for that, it's going to be a mixture of butter and brown sugar. For the cake part of it, standard ingredients: flour, sugar, butter, lots of butter, cream cheese, eggs. We need all 6, vanilla, and of course the bourbon part as well. Don't worry about this. Once we bake it, it's going to cook all the alcohol off, so you shouldn't have any issues there. But anyways, that's the quick intro. Let's get started. First step we got to do is cut these peaches. So what we're going to do is similar to cutting into an avocado. We're going to insert the knife until we hit that pit and just roll until we get through the full circumference of that peach. Once we've done that, we've got a nice cut seam, so we're just going to twist and pull away. This will leave us with one half without a pit, but the other half still has, and we got to take care of that guy. So similar to the first step, again, slice your knife in until you hit that pit and roll it until you get to the rest of that circumference. And instead of twisting, we're actually going to pull these 2 halves away. And again, we'll have one piece that doesn't have a pit, and we just have to pull that other pit off. If you struggle there, just keep doing that same technique until you can easily pull that pit off. So for this recipe, we need to do 8 slices per peach. So that means a half, quarter, and then cut those quarters back in half. So we'll do that real quick here. And once we have that done, we're going to start to peel. So when I started doing this, I realized that the knife was too big and I'd probably end up cutting myself, so I decided to go grab a paring knife. This knife is a little less sharp, but that's okay. We're still going to be able to get the job done. So just slide that blade along the skin, between the skin and the flesh, and just slowly work your way along the length until you get that full peel off for each slice. Just make sure you don't cut yourself. The peaches do get kind of slimy, so again, just be careful depending on how sharp your knife is. But just keep continuing until you get all the little skin bits off. We definitely don't want that in our cake. The sweeter part is that flesh, so we'll continue to peel all the peaches until we get through. Now let's take those peaches on to the next level. What we're going to do is add a 1/4 cup of butter, melt it down on the stove on about medium heat. Once we get that melted down, we're going to add a 1/2 cup of brown sugar. And I would keep an eye on this, make sure you whisk it constantly just so it doesn't burn and turn into caramel. But we're just looking for that sugar to melt into the butter and so that it's nice and consistent and smooth, and we're ready to go. Next step for us today is going to be adding that butter and brown sugar mixture to a very well greased bundt pan. Definitely take your time greasing it. You don't want any mishaps when we go to flip this bad boy over. But again, so we're going to pour that butter and brown sugar mixture into the bottom of that bundt pan. Make sure you don't leave any behind either. Got some hard work going into that. Don't want to waste anything. So now we have our peaches that we sliced up earlier, and we're just going to arrange those nicely in the bottom of the pan. The prettier the better, I guess, or if you want to go rogue, feel free to do it however you want. Now that we've got the top set, it's on to make the batter for the cake. For the batter today, you're going to need a stand mixer fitted with a paddle with a scraper on it. This helps us mix and not have to stop to scrape down the sides. Definitely a huge help throughout this process. So we've got a cup and a half of butter and then a 8-ounce package of cream cheese. Both of these have been sitting out at room temperature for about 2 hours. This is going to allow us to mix them more consistently and overall give us a more moist cake instead of a dense, dry cake. Now that we've got those mixed together, we're going to add our sugars. We need a cup and a half of regular sugar and then a cup and a half of light brown sugar. And then we're going to cream these two together. This is going to take us about 2 to 3 minutes. Definitely don't skip on this timing. This is really going to whip up the butter, cream cheese, and sugars all together, add lots of air pockets, so again that we don't have a dense, dry cake, but instead a very moist and light cake. Now that the butter and sugar mixture is ready to go, we got to get cracking with some eggs. We're going to add these eggs one at a time, just until that yolk gets mixed in, and keep going until we have all 6 mixed thoroughly into the batter. Now for the last and most important ingredient here, it's 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Now onto the dry ingredients. Here we're going to be using 3 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm going to run it through a sifter quick just to make sure that there's no big clumps or anything so that we get a nice incorporation into the batter. And then we are also going to need half a teaspoon of salt. We now have everything prepped, and the first thing we need to do is get our bourbon poured out. We are going to need a half a cup, which is about 2 ounces. If you're a little short, I'm a little short today, which is all good. Shouldn't affect anything, whatever you guys have on hand. And the way we're going to mix this is we're going to start with flour and go to bourbon and then alternate, and we're also going to end with flour just to make sure we get a nice smooth mix of everything together. So as we prep here, so I'm going to do about 1/4 of the flour, mix, add a splash of bourbon, mix, add some more flour, mix, another splash of bourbon, a second to last dose of flour here, mix that, and then the last of the bourbon's going to go in, and then the last of our flour is going to go in. And we just want to mix this until it's incorporated. Try not to overmix your batter here. Now that we've got that done, we get the pan that we previously put our peaches in, and we're going to gently scoop this into that pan. Don't overfill your bundt pan or else it's going to flow over in your oven, make a huge freaking mess, which none of us needs. But just take your time, smooth it out, make sure it looks nice and smooth on top, which doesn't really matter anyways because we're going to be flipping this over, but just so that it's touching all the surfaces of the pan for a nice even bake. And just a side note, I ended up taking this extra batter and putting it into a bread pan because I didn't want to waste it, and it came out pretty nicely as well. It turned into a nice pound cake. Alright, so that looks good. We're going to throw it in the oven for 1.5 hours at 325. So this cake's been sitting for about half an hour, just enough to cool it off, and so we're going to attempt to do the flip. And also, side note, my microphone had a malfunction, so I'm doing this after the fact, but I still wanted you guys to see the raw footage of me flipping this bad boy over. So I realize here it's a little too hot, so I have to get a pot holder real quick. But here's the moment of truth. Oh yeah, definitely a good flip there. And then I also try to pull this bundt pan off. give it a nice good tap just to loosen everything up, just to make sure there's no sides sticking to the pan that will pull away as you pull that pan off. But again, burnt my hand, so I grabbed the pot holders, but then couldn't get a grip, so I had to improvise and act quickly so that I could get it off without any issues and not hurting my hands. But there we are, folks. We got the flip done. Came out really well. I had no sticking, which I was honestly amazed by. Now we're going to do a quick taste test before we wrap up for today. So just get myself a little piece. Go. It's really nice and airy. When we whipped up the butter and cream cheese together and then took our time with creaming in the sugars, that really adds a lot of air to the batter because this is pretty dense. If you hadn't done that, there's no leavening agents in there. We didn't put any baking soda or baking powder in here, so if we don't do that, it's going to end up being very dense and not that good just because it's going to be dried out. It won't be pleasant, I'll put it that way. So this is definitely very soft. So I'm going to take a piece of the prime area here. Got the nice peach in there with the glaze. Oh yeah, really good. It reminds me of like a pound cake. Obviously, we put a lot of butter in there. But just having those peaches on top really lighten it up. Adds just enough sweetness to it where it's not overly sweet. It's not like you're just eating plain sugar, even though we definitely put a lot of sugar in here. But definitely really good. That brown sugar butter mixture kind of oozes into the cake as well. And as this sits, it's going to continue to ooze in there as well. So even if you let this sit overnight, it's going to just get better with time. You could even do a glaze, do powdered sugar and milk, a little bit of vanilla, and just whisk that together and glaze that on top. That'll add some sweetness as well. But definitely came out really good. Some of the things I probably would have changed is, just because it is the first time I've made it, I always try to look to improve upon the recipes that I do start making. I think nuts would go really good in here, like pecans or almonds even, just add a little bit of a crunch. Not too much, but something just in top. So as you're eating through it, you have a little bit different texture change. You could also do different fruits. I would stick to softer fruits just so as they cook down, they just keep getting softer. Like peaches, any sort of fresh berries. You could probably do apples or pears or anything like that. Definitely would be good. The cake is definitely a good base. Again, very versatile. I could use it for almost anything. But I think for the first time going through this recipe, it's definitely good. It definitely came out better than I thought. I was really nervous about flipping everything over and it sticking and looking kind of crazy. But that worked out really well. So just take your time, don't rush it. Just follow the steps and everything should work out great. But that's all we have for you guys today. I really hope you enjoyed it. Give this a shot. Let us know what you think, what changes you made to it, and let us know how it turned out. Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.